Daniel, you're going to talk to us about Santa and all the holly jolly good stuff that he's doing, or is it something else entirely?
It's probably going to be the most depressing story of the show.
Hey, everyone, laughs and jokes and a swell good time.
If you got a cat and it's not in your lap, put it in your lap.
Or a puppy.
Or a small child that can't understand English. So, something that it's kind of always floating above my mind, and I'm thinking of off and on every single day, is when is the next recession going to hit? Because we know another one is coming. I've said for a while, I've not been the best at guessing dates. I'm good at guessing things, but not dates. But I've been saying that this is the year that we're going to have a major recession or depression. And there's more evidence to that. So as far as where does Santa come from, there's this term that in Wall Street, et cetera, called the Santa Rally, where things do really well because everyone's buying things for Christmas, and so stocks go up, sales go up, inventory gets sold, et cetera, et cetera. That didn't really happen this year, so that's one part of it. Instead, the investors endured a 20% correction from mid-December peak through Christmas Eve, which means that they lost money when they were expecting to gain money, because they usually, the stocks go up around that point because everyone buys everything around Christmas. And on top of that, you have the spread between the 3-month bill and the 10-year note has inverted for the first time in 12 years. That just means one of the factors that you can look at when a recession is about to happen. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, this entire article goes back and forth into another one that millennials can't afford, nor do they want to buy sprawling multi-bedroom mansions that baby boomers have bought. And
Daniel, you got to speak English to me. What do you mean buying a home? I don't know what that means. What are you talking about?
So there's a whole lot of things that are actively happening right now that happened before a recession happens. They happened before the Great Depression happened, and they're happening now.
Recession indicators.
Recession indicators. And we've been seeing more and more of these as time goes on. I'm always in the back of my mind just going, okay, when's this going to happen? Because since we did away with Glass-Steagall, banks are back together, we're back on these boom and bust cycles and the way the economy functions. It was the dot-com bubble burst in 2000s, and then you had the 08 crash. And we've extended it a little bit further because now we're in 2019, but we're dealing with a recession that's going to be coming. They're looking at jobs numbers. The jobs numbers are looking like they usually do before a recession happens. So to some degree, the way I've looked at this in a big sense is the election and the presidential campaign as it exists now is very much a patty cake round right now, because almost everything that is happening now that's being talked about is going to be deemed almost completely irrelevant when a recession or depression happens.
Right. So
I think that this is something that I've been expecting and factored into why I think, for example, Sanders is going to win so big, because Trump's going to get hit with this, and he's going to be, it's not my fault, but everyone's going to blame him regardless, because you're always blamed if you're president and a recession hits. You're going to have your Kamala Harris, your Beto O'Rourke's, who are not going to have a lot to say, because right now everyone's kind of on this edge of what they can do, how they can survive, and people, although it's terrible and they're suffering, and there's some, $15 more people's getting more money, people are still on this very teetering edge of can't survive a $500 cost, can't survive your car breaking down, can't survive a job being closed. So what's going to happen when that just knocks over the edge? Everyone starts getting fired. That's when people become more demanding of more extreme solutions.
Right.
And it's going to fail under a right-wing government, which historically speaking means people are going to push even more left. And the centrists that exist right now are going to have less of a case, whereas Sanders, who's really the front runner right now, is going to have even more of a case, because he's going to say this is exactly what happened, this is exactly what I predicted, this is what I've been saying for forever. It's going to make him do that, but a lot of people are going to lose their lives.
First, I think we also make it very clear that this recession, depression possibly, is on the way of coming here. We kicked the can down the road far too many times. And remember, the influence of Wall Street, the big banks and corporations have over our elected officials, especially in Washington, D.C., they built a bubble there, and they have a lot of influence over both Republican and Democratic lawmakers, to where any of the legislation that was created during FDR's administration is long since gone. We got to remember the reason why that legislation was created in the first place, because of how devastating the Depression was in the 1930s. You had people starving in the street, dying in the street. You had massive homelessness. You had people basically being beaten down.
The bonus army that got gunned down with machine guns.
Yes, and those were veterans from World War I being gunned down. And that was happening in Washington, D.C., and we could think that that won't happen again. And I think we've deluded ourselves for a long time thinking that the Depression or something like that will never happen to the American people. Anything created by humanity is destined for some form of failure or mishap. And right now, what we have is the perfect storm, because Wall Street, the big banks and corporations have been heavily deregulated by both Democratic administrations, the Clinton and Obama administrations, as well as the Republican administrations, starting from Reagan, Bush Sr., Bush Jr., and under Trump. Surprise, surprise. So the regular playbook of playing it safe, especially following the neoliberal system that we have, will no longer work, because and I don't want to see it happen, but it's going to happen. When this thing happens, a lot of Americans are going to get impacted by this. You're going to see a failure of the government able to respond, to help people, and also you're going to see a massive wide unemployment, as well as people being kicked out of their homes. And that's going to cause people to get angry. That's going to cause people to react violently to an irrational situation that they have no control over. And you're going to see a lot of these establishment leaders like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, and even on the Republican side too, they're going to be unable to act because their corporate donors have a leash around their neck. So
they're going to tell them to keep in line and
keep in line. And remember how that turned out for the Hoover administration. FDR came in, and as soon as FDR came in, he actually had a monumental task of trying to fix the country. And you know, I recommend you guys actually watching the Ken Burns documentary on the Roosevelts, from Theodore Roosevelt, FDR, as well as Eleanor Roosevelt. And there's an interesting, I think it's episode 2 or 3. Or it gets to where FDR is actually elected into office. It's nearing his final year as president for his first term, and one of his advisors said about like some of the policies that he was doing to help people get out of this depression that we were in. They said to him, if this doesn't work, this will be your last term as president. And FDR turned to him and said, if this doesn't work, I'm going to be the last president, because it was very clear then, just as it is now, the American people wanted something, and there was a very good chance of violence to be happening consistently. Not to mention, add on the fact that people couldn't drink because it was prohibition. I mean, if any time you need a drink, it's when the thing's gone to shit. I mean, for fuck's sake.
Right.
It's just downright depressing and sad to see this.
So I want to tack on to what you're saying there. I think you bring up an extremely important thing that we all need to ask ourselves and wrestle with a little bit. So if you go back to the Great Depression, 1929.
Yeah.
You start getting into the FDR era, and that was a very significant left-leaning push that the American people had. That's the era of Eugene V. Debs. It's the era where Henry Wallace was the vice president. He was
the second VP and third VP.
Right, before Truman became the vice president in the last FDR administration. If you look at even what FDR had to say at the time, he talked about how he was able to save capitalism. And I think we're at a time now where we have this kind of socialistic resurgence in the country. We have people saying, wait, explain to me again why socialism is obviously wrong? Because if you can't show me why it's obviously wrong, I think I maybe need to understand it a little bit better, and maybe we can reason through what the right path forward is. And if we're going to, we don't know what the bubble is going to be that bursts. We don't know what the straw that's going to break the camel's back is. Maybe it's the housing crisis again. Maybe it's student loans. But if we're poised to hit another giant financial recession in this boom-bust cycle that Daniel was talking about, we need to reckon with the fact that the last time through, the United States taxpayer bailed out Wall Street, and Wall Street showered themselves with bonuses, and were able to keep doing what they were doing, keep their grift going, and knowingly build up a new bubble that is going to burst again, that the American taxpayer is going to again bail them out. We need to find a way. We need to wrestle with, how do we keep this from happening? How do we put the American citizen first and not the financial institutions that are basically screwing us over repeatedly? How can we prioritize the well-being of Americans and not the well-being of a nameless, faceless, not nameless, but a faceless corporation that somehow legally is treated as a person and somehow legally is allowed to use their financial power to influence our elected leaders. How do we transition away from that? And this is the hard thing. I don't have all the answers, but this is the questions that we need to ask ourselves, because we're in that same era of the late 1920s, 1930s political.
But no matter what, I mean, we are heading down that road, and it's disturbing. So, Daniel, I want you to have the final word on this, so then I can be off.
The context of how we look at America right now, and really the world, because these things always spread worldwide whenever they happen. We haven't really seen what a Great Depression looks like worldwide. We're so interconnected. It's gonna affect everyone simultaneously. So what I expect to happen long term is you're gonna have a number of countries on the planet that move very much in a fascist right direction, because these are the exact circumstances in abject poverty. Like, people that keep saying, like, Trump is like, oh, he's a fascist. It's like, no. If you don't understand why Germany, the situation that they were at after World War I, the humiliation they felt, the death of their economy, that's what you need. You need that kind of depravity to go fascist. If it's not, you get something quasi, you get neo-fascist. You'll get something that, like, similar to what we have now. It's not just that we don't know what bubble is going to burst, like Paul said. It's that there are many bubbles, and if one of them bursts, all of them burst.
The system is designed to burst, because it's one bad mistake, or somebody screams fire in the building, everyone's going to panic, and then that's when you see the system crash.
It's going to happen very quickly. It's going to happen very slowly and then very quickly. And we don't know when it's going to happen, but I mean, I've been preparing for like the last 6 months of how I organize my life with the expectation this is going to happen, because I feel like it's going to be much worse than people expect. It's going to happen sooner than people expect. It's going to happen longer than people expect.
And for the record, we don't want this to happen, but this is something that none of us can control.
Should go without saying.
Yeah, I know. It's but see, the thing is that we're all going to be victims of the neoliberal top 1% establishment.
But the way that we look at the world as a country and a planet will be different than what it is now. Yeah. And I think, to Paul's point, that difference will demand massive change.
Absolutely.
And historically speaking, you either have massive change moving to the right or massive change moving to the left.
And I want to reiterate on my point. We like FDR a lot. We like a lot of the policies that came out of the New Deal. We like a lot of the way that the country moved. But it was not enough.
No, it wasn't. And I think I think for the system that he had,
we can't use that as a historical model. We have to go further.
No, we have to go further. I just think the thing is, FDR did something. I'll give him credit for this. He did something that normally you don't see someone of his social class do, and that's hold his social class accountable. Which is why you still see, especially with the top 1%, he's still vilified, because he did the big no-no, which is going after your own social group. But he saw the writing on the wall that if he doesn't make these certain policy moves or surround himself with people who understand more about the issues impacting the American people, there was going to be a violent revolution. He saw that. And again, check out that documentary on the Roosevelts. They were ahead of their time, but you know what? We need to go further. Hey, did you like that video? Hit the subscribe button, hit that thumbs up icon, and also hit that ring bell notification so that way you guys know when we have more content up on the Hard Lens Media YouTube channel. But Paul, what else can people do to help us out?
Keep watching.